Hey, gang, it's me, Dr. Steve. So, what are the real political implications of the crossing of the Rubicon, this unprecedented indictment of President Trump? You've seen the polls. He's surging, no question, but will it last? What should we make of Ron DeSantis in the midst of all this? What happened in Wisconsin, that Republican judge getting crushed by the Democrat for their open state Supreme Court seat? Well, we're going to cover all that and more with the one and only Rich Baris, a.k.a. the People's Pundit. I know for most of you, Rich needs no introduction. You've seen him on Fox. He's a regular on Steve Bannon's War Room. But for those of you just getting to know Rich, he's considered by many, myself included, hands down the single best polling analyst out there. You got to subscribe to his YouTube channel. I'm a huge fan of his Inside the Numbers podcast. He's got a great locals platform, of which I am a proud member, and where he's been busy of late analyzing the political fallout from the indictment and all of its various implications. So, Rich, welcome back, my friend. Great to have you with us again. A happy Easter to you and your family before I forget.
Yeah, right back at you. It's going to be a good one. Right back at you. It's always good to be here. Thanks for having me back.
Well, before we were chatting, before the interview, we were chatting, and I found out you and I not only have the guitar in common, but we have probably the greatest electric guitarist of all time, just in terms of the standard he set, in common as well. Randy Rhoads, our mutual love for Randy Rhoads. When did you discover the former and unfortunately late guitarist for Ozzy Osbourne? Do you remember your first Randy Rhoads moment?
You know, I think it probably was somewhere in the vicinity of 1989 to 90, something like that. Yeah, and you know, by that time, when I started to really get into not only the guitar but music in general, you know, unfortunately, he was shortly thereafter replaced by a series of guitarists, and I had to retroactively learn a lot about Randy Rhoads, as so many others did. You know, by that time, Ozzy had gone in a great but different direction. But for me, learning the guitar, and this is what we were talking about before, he just did something that was so different, so special, brought classical guitar to metal, to hard rock, and it's not even metal. I mean, it's just beautiful hard rock.
It is.
Yeah, I mean, something nobody else had done. You were so right. At that time, it was Eddie Van Halen, it was Jimmy Page, it was you know, all these others that really got the, you know, they had their own niche. But Randy did something that was for people who you know, have a broad appreciation of music, and I love classical music. I mean, I just never saw the marriage of the two, and Randy did that. And it's special, and it's a shame.
It's really interesting because in many ways, you know, my wife and I have talked about this because we both got music degrees early on, and in many ways, if you listen to the cello has a comparable sonority to a distorted electric guitar, especially in its low strings. So there's even I don't know, are you familiar with the cello quartet Apocalyptica that do all the? Are you familiar with them?
So I don't think so, but I'm hearing what you're saying with the cello, because
yeah, they're a cello quartet and they do all these heavy metal covers, particularly Metallica, and it sounds amazing. It sounds awesome, and again, it's got that real strong kind of grungy sound, this power metal like sound, but then what that does is it enables heavy metal to go back to the classical symphonic world and exploit that world and bring it. It's really neat because there's this trend that scholars talk about, archaeofuturism, where we're all going back. We're going back to tradition, but we're still keeping our technology. So tradition and technology are coming together, like in Star Wars, you know, the most technological society, but also this kind of mystical religious force society. So tradition and technology are coming together. And I mean, that kind of classical metal that Randy Rhoads really blazed the trail for, it seems to be like he was so ahead of his time with this archaeofuturist movement. It's really quite cool.
Yeah, I mean, you take you said the cello, and I'm hearing what you're saying, because immediately I'm thinking like the outro to Mr. Crowley, which is so nothing like anything anybody's done before. For anybody who's played the guitar, they know what we're talking about. That is not a rock solo. You know, I mean, that is something.
No,
he makes a rock solo.
A violinist could have played that.
A violinist, a celloist, right? And you know, the piano guys. I don't know if you've heard of them. They do stuff.
Oh, sure. They were wonderful.
They are. They're fantastic. You know, and you can go back and forth like that. Also, somebody had just asked me for it. That's why I mean it's relevant. It just came to my mind because he just said, "Didn't you tell me there were all these like Nuno from Extreme and Brad Paisley?" Yeah, they did the Game of Thrones soundtrack, and it was like crazy. And it was not enough.
Or Flight of the Bumblebee, Rimsky-Korsakov. Just incredible speed, incredible virtuosity. Yeah.
And I just don't think people would have dipped into that if it wasn't for Randy Rhoads. I don't think, I mean, maybe we would have gotten there, but without a doubt, he's the bridge. And
he's the bridge. Yeah.
Yeah. And if you want to warm your fingers up, I mean, it's Randy, you know. I mean,
Yngwie Malmsteen, when he in the interview said when he was very young, I think before anyone even heard of Randy Rhoads, when he was in Sweden, he said his parents were classical musicians, so he listened to a lot of Paganini, a lot of Bach, and was starting to put that influence on his guitar. But you know, he didn't really come onto the scene until several years after Randy Rhoads. And so just chronologically, there's no way around it. Randy's that fixed point where you just don't hear classically influenced playing like that, not just even at the solo level, but even just the riffs he would come up with, like Diary of a Madman.
Yeah, I was just going to point that out. Diary of a Madman. No, forget about the solos. Forget about the outros. You know, Diary of a Madman is a perfect example. And again, I had to retroactively learn him. I had seen Ozzy play with Zakk Wylde. I'd been to a couple of Ozfests when I was younger. Even Joe Holmes. I got to see Joe Holmes. You know, that was after Zakk Wylde. But much to Zakk Wylde's credit, he was nothing like Randy Rhoads. He went in a totally different direction. So, you know, I mean, this coming from somebody... I mean, Steve, I would sit there when I first got the guitar, and of course, everyone wants to learn the opening to Sweet Child of Mine or Paradise City. If you're in my age group and you're learning the guitar, that years ago, But that wasn't only me. I'd sit there like by ear trying to figure out Moonlight Sonata. You know, I mean, that's the way. And so when I heard Randy, I'm like, oh, this guy did what this guy did it. Oh, let's not, Rich. Just listen first, and then We'll pick this up again after we hear some guy who obviously had this idea first and is the master at it, you know. So he was just, it really is a shame, that life was cut so short. God knows what we would have gotten from it. I was telling you about this conversation I had with my son, 13 years old, and even he, discovering his love for music. One of the first things he said when I introduced him to Randy Rhoads was that, I mean, even a 13-year-old knows the greatness that we missed with this man passing so early.
Yeah, and he heard it with 2 albums. You know, that's what Randy recorded. 2 albums. There's some live recordings out there that are amazing as well, but 2 formal albums, and to make that kind of impact on the guitar world with basically 16 songs, is astonishing.
Right. I mean, you watch those lives, and they're really cool. He's like, so many people have a lot, are having fun up there on the stage. But you look at him; he's so young. He's effortlessly doing these things.
He loved it. Yeah, he loved it. He loved it. You could tell. All right, man. Well, away from that wonderful mountaintop experience, so let's get into the weeds here. So actually, I wouldn't mind just getting out of the way, just your assessment, because I know I was listening a bit to your Inside the Numbers, your assessment of what happened with Dan Kelly in Wisconsin. So for those who don't know, they had their election for an open state Supreme Court seat. And Kelly, the Republican, he just got trounced. I think this is his second time, if I recall. Was it?
Yes.
I think, he ran once before. He got beaten to a pulp both times. And of course, it's all Trump's fault. So I mean, what's your take on what happened in Wisconsin, kind of nutshell, as it were?
I went back for Inside the Numbers, and all these, and it is loser think. I hate to invoke Scott Adams here, but it is loser think. This immediately, it's Trump's fault. Dan Kelly did not want Donald Trump's endorsement. His campaign wanted him to stay away. Trump is kind of like damned if he does, damned if he doesn't. If he would have helped and he would have lost, it would have been his fault. If he doesn't help, he doesn't get involved, it's still his fault. He's become a scapegoat, and the Republican Party has been like treading water or like running in place for many years. And I think what I was trying to do the other day, and I really would impress upon people now, is to remind them what a loser party the Republican Party was before Donald Trump had a small reprieve to show them, no, you don't have to be restrained by this map, and you can win, number one, and also you can ignore what they call blue walls, red walls, blue walls. They don't exist. You can change the political dynamics, the coalitions, the paradigm, and you can break whatever walls they think they have built to protect them. And people don't think about George W. Bush, one time at an almost 90% approval rating, and yet still only managed to win re-election by a few thousand votes in the state of Iowa. That's it, folks. Before that, they were horrible losers who lost anywhere between 10 to 20% of the third-party vote to the Ross Perot coalition. Attitudinally very similar. Pat Buchanan, by the way, attitudinally very similar to Donald Trump. These are voters. Sean Trendy in 2012, after the loss of Mitt Romney, called them the case of the missing white voter. But here's the difference with Trump. The electorate is different, and it's not just white. So we've now had all of these election cycles to learn this lesson, and I don't know how much more clear it can become before people understand that they had 6 years to win the trust of these voters that they never were very good at appealing to. The only reason why Bush won some of them the first time in 2000 is because Pat Buchanan's campaign collapsed. And he did run a very America First campaign for those who weren't old enough. He didn't say, I'm going to start nation all over the country. He said, taxes are too high, corporations get away with everything, and we can't be the world's police. That was Bush's 2000 platform. It's astonishing, really.
Yeah.
So
Condoleezza Rice as well. Condoleezza Rice was she was an isolationist, but yeah, before 9/11, she was very much in league with that. And then obviously, well, that ship sailed, but
came very close to winning Wisconsin against Gore. So we're talking about, I think, 3,500 votes. So when we look at a state like Wisconsin, I tried to go back pretty far. I mean, it is very significant historically, any way you measure it, that Donald Trump is the first Republican candidate at the top of the ticket to win the state of Wisconsin since not 1988, like the other Rust Belt states, 1984. It rejected Michael Duke. It rejected George Herbert Walker Bush when he was the heir apparent after Reagan. Everyone voted for Bush. He won over 400 electoral votes against Dukakis, yet Wisconsin voted for Dukakis. And if you look at Reagan's map, the 84 map, compare it to Bush's loss. All right. Then take the 16 map where Trump won it. Compare it to Romney's loss. Take the Johnson map just from 2022 when he won re-election. Compare it to Kelly's map. You will see they're the same maps. I mean, since 1984, they are generally the same. We've had a couple of counties here and there. The 2020 map is still very much like the 16 map, with the exception of one county, Steve. One county, Door County, the Peninsula County on the eastern side of Wisconsin. And there's a reason for this. There is a voter that Republicans and their pundits and the DeSantis people, whether they want to hear it or not, they're blinded to these voters. They don't understand how somebody could maybe not even vote, but maybe they did, and they voted for Obama. Then they voted maybe twice, by the way, once or twice, at least once. Then they voted for Trump.
Right.
Then they voted maybe for Biden, even. Maybe they stuck with Trump, but some of them said, I was Trump in 2016, I'm going to go to Biden. Now they're back with Trump. These voters will never vote for Mitt Romney. They will never vote for Dan Kelly, and they will never vote for Ron DeSantis.
Wow.
That's the end of this story. So until, I kept going, I don't know if you saw it on Friday, but I just kept showing the maps over and over to people. Look at this. If I took the label away, 40 years worth of electoral data, you would have a difficult time discerning which map is which if I took the label away. That's because Reagan was a lot more populist and a lot more, he wasn't traditional Republican at all. Back then, Right. That was
right. That would have been Bush Senior, yeah, or
right.
Gerald Ford for that matter, yeah,
He was much
absolutely.
more populist than people gave him credit for, a little less conservative than people give him credit for, right?
Right, right, right,
I mean, that's just the truth of it. And we
right,
have these myths that we believe about these politicians, and those myths, unfortunately, inform, our opinions on what went wrong here, what went right there, and when they're just simply not true. So we can get into some of the specifics, but I told people on election night, there are 3 counties. Obviously, I'm going to be looking at some of the other counties, and Wisconsin's schizophrenic on how returns come in. But as soon as I see the Northwest, what Barnes and I call lumberjack country, as soon as I see Ashland, Bayfield, Douglas, I'm going to know how this map is going to look. And for those who watched the coverage on Tuesday, I told them exactly how it was going to fill out. Exactly.
Right.
I mean, once I saw Kelly, performing like Mitt Romney, not much better in those areas, and losing Sauk, which is a telltale. And for instance, Trump, he barely won Sauk in 2016. He barely lost it in 2020. And folks, when I say barely, this county can go 40 to 100 votes. That's it.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. And then underperforming Trump in the new Trumpian areas. So I said this will be at best a Romney victory, maybe worse. And that's exactly what happened. I said, I'll give him, at best case, he may tighten it to 6, but, plus or minus 3 or 4, it ended up 11, so, or where we're at right now is just about 11. So
yeah, double digits. Yeah.
Mainstream conservatives can't do it, Steve. They can't do it.
We were talking, it's so interesting. I think I saw your tweet on the latest Rasmussen poll that just came out that showed it showed Trump's biggest support. Biggest support yet. I think second highest lead he's had over Biden, since 2020. But the devil was in the detail. I mean, good devil was in the details in the sense it was so fascinating in that Trump's biggest support in terms of margins were coming from people making under 30. I think it was $30,000 a year, if I recall. He runs away with it with everyone from $100,000 at below.
Yes.
And every people $100,000 above, forget it. They're all in with Biden. But what I found so fascinating here was particularly the so-called underclass that's supposed to be solidly Democrat if we still use sort of a 1980s, 1990s political model.
Yep.
The underclass is supposed to be the labor, vote, and they're as faithful a constituency that any Democrat can get. They've abandoned the Democrats. At least when Trump is on that, when Trump is there, so that, I think, doesn't that prove your point? The days of the Rockefeller Republican are over. Gang, are you tired of feeling like your financial future is at the mercy of big banks, corporations, and Bidenomics? Are you concerned about the recent failures and bailouts of these institutions? Well, enough. It's time to take control of your economic destiny and create your own economy. My friends over at Replace Your Mortgage have created a bulletproof financial blueprint that does just that. From paying off your home in 5 to 7 years on your current income to finding cheap capital to invest in your real estate and protecting it all by creating your own family bank. They've helped hundreds of Turley Talks listeners over the last 2 years, and I want the rest of you to enjoy the benefits of working with Michael Lush and his great team. They have a live 5-day event coming up soon where they'll walk you step by step to get ahead and stay ahead in these economic times. Click on that link below or go to turleyeconomy.com and register for this 5-day event. It's amazing. I'm actually getting feedback already from our listeners and the success that they're having with this. By creating your own economy, you could free yourself from the limitations and uncertainties of the traditional banking system. You can build a sustainable, resilient financial future that's based on your own hard work and creativity. So don't wait, gang. Take the first step towards creating your own economy today. Start building the life you deserve at turleyeconomy.com.
It does. And this is what, when we came, Rasmussen, I talked to Mark Mitchell about this. They came out, a week after our head-to-heads. And if you looked at how other Republican candidates did against Biden, ours a little bit different. But I did speak to Mark Mitchell about this. It's just, everyone polls a little bit different. the devil's really in the details, because if you look at how the other candidates do, what's really happening is that some of the vote that's we know is going to go to Biden goes to the unsure category. So it makes it look like they're doing comparable to Trump. And that's why he made the point, and he's right, that it's not the margin. What's important is the overall share of the vote that somebody is winning. So the fact that Trump is higher than the rest of them means that he is earning that much. It doesn't matter if somebody else is also ahead by 7 if their share is lower, because you cannot count on those voters. These are the voters we're talking about. You can't count on them just pulling the lever for the R because, oh, by the way, they supported Trump. We now have 5 cycles almost, if you count the specials, of election data. It's not true. These voters may not show, number one. And if they do show, you cannot count on them to vote for the Rockefeller Republican. They may vote for the Democrat. They very well may vote for them. So this underclass issue, CNN was lamenting when we released our poll, which was in 2016, in all the way to 2020, Trump was like, I'm the working class billionaire and I'm winning the working class vote. But in truth, you really got to look by education. And Trump was doing better with some wealthier people if they didn't have a college degree.
Exactly.
This is different now. This is now he's taking the underclass from them. You are either labor, you're like lower income labor, or your social safety net voters or disabled voters. And these are people who, Democrats used to pride themselves on being the champion of. But we had DeSantis losing that vote to Biden, not by much, but still losing it with a bigger undecided, where Trump was running away with it. This is a big difference. And that's why, you saw the analysts on CNN and other places were having a meltdown, because this can't be done on the back of white vote only. And they're looking in there and they're seeing it, that this is real. So, working Mexican men, even women now are coming over to him. It's a monumental shift. It's
30%, almost 30% black. I saw that. It's just stunning. Yeah, absolutely stunning. So, I love it. I mean, again, gang, as you're listening to this, there really are 2 major interpretive paradigms of what's going on. Either the Republican Party is great, it's got everything it needs, it's Trump that keeps messing it up. That's your sort of National Review donor class vantage point.
That's right.
Or what Rich is saying to us here is actually it's the opposite. It's the Republican Party that's got some major problems of disconnect with a political paradigm shift that's happening that Trump was on the front lines of. And is really riding that wave. I think DeSantis seems to have been riding that wave, but it's selective. It seems like it by no means is something that that he can necessarily duplicate nationally, right? I'm thinking of Scott Walker. Scott Walker seems to have run a very populist campaign in Wisconsin, did amazing there, but he couldn't translate it at a national level, possibly because he was listening too much of the donor class.
This is when I saw DeSantis come out, and before he had released the statement he should have released initially, and he made the little quib about, I don't know what goes into paying a porn star hush money. I did equate him at that point to Scott Walker. It reminded me of Mr. Trump, we don't need an apprentice in the White House. And the reason why it sounded like it is because these are the same people who are around them at the time. The Bushes, the Walkers, the consulting class that was around them are now sadly surrounding Ron DeSantis. And people are, I do want to make this point, because we had been polling the Republican primary as well. We had Trump, he had a lead, but we had Trump lower than most of these other pollsters did, 43%. I actually think Trafalgar, when they released that 3 different polling results that past week, very similar to what we had. Ron DeSantis was, around 30% at one point. It was before the indictment, though, when we started to see erosion in his support. And I think what happened is exactly what you just said. Eventually, when people are becoming presidential candidates, they're no longer just a governor. They're going to be seen as the commander in chief, and people start to vet them. What did Ron DeSantis, he says this now, about trade, but what did he do when he was in the House? He says it now about you. I mean, Steve, he flip-flopped
very rhino
times on Ukraine in like
very
a 10-day period. Yep. And we were hearing this. So he started to fall. And then when Trump announced, I'm going to be indicted, it certainly exacerbated it. And some of that would have happened, I do believe, just to be fair to DeSantis, some of that would have happened no matter what. Because there's a group of people who were saying, I'm thinking about voting. I was thinking about voting for somebody else, especially older Republicans, because I thought maybe it would be time to move on from Trump. But I never thought this would happen in the United States of America. So now I'm Trump or bust. And that's so.
I mean, let me ask you I'm just curious, just from a personal level, because I mean, you're a political junkie, if ever there were one. Just as passionate, you're a passionate, years-long student of the polis, the political operating of human civilization. Just at a personal level, how did you respond to news of this indictment? I mean, we all knew it was coming in a sense, but when it flashed on that early Friday evening, how did you respond to that?
I really did think that it probably was going, this was probably going to go down as one of the darker, if not darkest days. It's not so much the prosecution of a former president. I kind of like the idea of a society where we hold former presidents to account. But I wonder why, you're going after this guy when we have presidents who have committed war crimes and they have never been prosecuted. They're deeply corrupt. Everybody knows it. They use their office to enrich themselves. And yet this is what they were doing to go after Donald Trump. I wasn't surprised because I like to think that I understand the era we're living in. And these people are trying to survive him. But, personally, I can't separate the views that I hear from voters as a pollster every day, going all the way back to 15 to 16. These people who were voting for Bernie and then said, I'm going to vote for Trump. And in this era, that doesn't happen, folks. There's no synergy there anymore between the parties. And I didn't hear them fully at first. I mean, I heard them, but I didn't understand them. So it's just, to me, one more sad attempt to cover or erase the grievances of a huge part of the country instead of responding to them. And it saddens me because this can't survive. This cannot sustain at this rate. And then also, again, it's not the former president thing. It's the fact that, everybody knows. He's
the retributive element to it.
And this is, there's going to be a line directly from the White House to Alvin Bragg's office, from the White House to Fulton County. You will find those connections. They're clearly scared of him, and they're doing something that nobody has ever seen in America before, because this really is a make or break moment for this country. I mean, you're either going to be able to pick your own leadership or you're not. And if this continues, then there will never be another person who's on the left or the right, another champion of the people again. They simply will conclude.
They'll just get rid of them.
Right. We'll be prosecuted. If I run, if I do this, I'll be prosecuted. My family will be persecuted and abused. And we'll be forced to pick leaders from a slate of scumbag, state-sponsored cronies, losers.
It'll be officially a post-democratic society in that sense. Yeah, that's the word tragic just kept coming to my mind, or better, tragedy, I guess, in an ancient Greek sense. If the Republicans are the stupid party, if they're the buffoons, I really do see the Democrats in many ways as the tragedians. They're the Captain Ahabs, whose just obsessions just seems to ultimately lead to their doom, but they bring a lot of people down with them. I just think they're just a very tragic lot in many respects. All right, let's talk numbers. It appears rather obvious that this is all backfiring on the Democrats. You've looked at the macro and micro data. So what's your assessment on the fallout from the indictment?
So I think that there will be people, I don't know if I guess I fall somewhere in the middle. I don't know that I say it as a mass red pill kind of event, but what I do see are these demographics that like Trump, they like his policies. What they did not like was the rocking of the boat, every day.
Mean tweets.
They didn't like that stuff. There was a certain, a certain kind of stability that they were used to in their politics. And maybe even some of them had supported him the first time, but didn't really know what that meant. You know, I want this guy as a change agent to come in. What I think ultimately be something we look back on is that those people really did compare, you know, they did, you know, a pro and con sheet, you know, all the warts that come along with Trump, but all the good that comes along with him. And then, by the way, if we let this continue, if I really do think people are smart enough to see how dangerous this is. And there was this overarching narrative that just kept coming to us in the 15 and 16 days that we're now hearing again, which is, you know what, for all of his faults, there's got to be a reason they want to stop this guy. There's got to be a reason other than what you hear in the media. There is something he wants to do. There is some threat that he poses to them, and I'm all in on that threat. You know, I mean, that's it. Yeah. That's what I want. So I think that could be a huge, play a huge role as well. I mean, this was a recoil event. I mean, Americans recoiled from this. They really did.
Have they recoiled? Have they recoiled more than you expected? Did you, like at the very beginning when this happened, you know, on Friday, it was like, okay, this exactly what you said. Some said, all right, this is, or you know, was it Thursday? I think Thursday night. This is going to be, this is the moment. This is, you know, this is going to bring everybody over to Trump. Others said, no, this is Trump's going down. Everyone's going to go and sign on there. Others were a little bit more, well, it'll move a little bit here. It might move a little bit there. I mean, do you see more stark movement than you were expecting?
I did. Because, again, we had him in the 43 range, 45 in the primary, for instance. And maybe he had, among the likeliest voters, he had a small edge with Biden, a few points here and there. The likely voter went from Trump plus 2 over Biden to Trump plus 7. It went from Trump plus 13 in the primary to Trump plus 29.
Yeah, it was insane.
Huge numbers.
Yeah,
and
huge numbers.
Rasmussen's pollster is trying to explain this in little short videos. Like, this is a massive shift in a presidential election. Right. This is not normal. What I wonder, what I wonder going forward, I think Van Jones tipped their hand on CNN that very night. And he said, this indictment is not going to cut it. This is going to backfire. This is not going to be good. Let's hope the stuff in Georgia and the special counsel is going to
But now they've already tainted it now. They've already tainted it, haven't they?
Well, this is the question. I mean, do you think, as some DeSantis supporters are trying to convince donors, for instance, do you subscribe to the theory, because it has been part of DeSantis' strategy, you know, that he would be indicted? I mean, that was his strategy.
That's part of it. Yeah.
Do you believe that theory, or do you believe the theory that you're hearing others like Cernovich push, which is everything from this point on is going to be viewed as fake? It doesn't matter if they actually find something.
Exactly. It's all perception. Yeah.
It's all. I'm leaning. I like to wait for voters, and I like to wait for events to play out. But I'm leaning towards Teflon Don again. They did this again. And, you know, to face it, we've done measurements like this, and others like Morning Consult have. It doesn't matter if you're asking about the economy, you're asking about immigration. We didn't ask about inflation during Trump because there was none. But, you know, just the stability of the world and foreign policy. Are things getting better, or are they getting worse? On every metric, Trump, was ahead. I mean, Biden is now way, way below Trump levels, and he went on to lose. So for people who are out there, you know, making this kind of false choice, the truth is, if it is a rematch, Trump-Biden rematch, Trump doesn't have to beat some gold standard. He just has to beat the Biden standard. And the shine is off Biden now. Biden got some votes from people, Steve, because they believe that decency argument. That shine is gone. It's worn off. Nobody believes Biden's a decent old man anymore. The Uncle Joe image is gone. It's been replaced with a delusional, nasty old man who is incompetent and can't, run the country.
Right. And it's astonishing, too, because if you think about it, we're more united as a people than we've ever been in many respects. We're more anti-war than we've ever been, especially since the height of the Vietnam era. Um, all the so-called racist indicators are at an all-time low. 1950s, 90% of the population believed that interracial marriage was wrong. Today, 90% are all for it and support it. I mean, you take all these basic, what they call racist indicators, and it's been plummeting. It's been going down now 40, 50 years. We have never been more united. And what's so fascinating is that unity is increasingly manifesting itself in a unity against the ruling class, against the permanent political class. And you hit it. You hit the nail on the head in the sense of it seems like the devil's bargain that the Democrats are playing here is that their constituency are so rabidly anti-Trump, they're willing to look past this glaring discrepancy that if the political class is going to start indicting each other, why is it only limited to one person? Wait a minute now, guys. I mean, Fox had a panel of some Democrat voters on, and yesterday, I think it was on Fox and Friends or something, and that's what several of them were saying. They're like, I don't really buy it. Not only is there nothing really in this indictment, but why are you just picking on Trump? I mean, you guys are all kind of scumbags. Why are you only picking on one person? And that's the devil's bargain, because once Republican DAs in red states respond in kind, what are the Democrats going to say? Hey, this is political. This is a political witch hunt. Everyone's going to say, yeah, but we all saw you were doing it too. I mean, what's that? That CNN poll, that weird CNN poll that found like 60% supported the indictment, but like 75% all believed it was political.
No, the total nonsense but they needed one of those, right? Because there was so many others that were showing quite the opposite. So they needed somebody to come out with this. And, with the numbers, what you're saying, how these numbers manifest in the polling, when we're looking at them, you're talking about you made a really good point on the unity, despite the ruling class's best efforts, right? More anti-war than ever. There's constant attempts to divide racially, yet we're less racist, I believe, than we've been, certainly.
Oh yeah, all the stats show it. Yeah,
of course. Yeah. So to me, when I'm looking at it, this is another change that is really a big difference between what we saw in 2016 and what we saw in 2020. So this non-intervention crowd, we asked a series of states in 2020, who do you think is most likely to start a war? Because I believe, a lot of the media coverage had a lot to do with this, but Michigan, Minnesota, very important states where Trump either won or almost won in 2016, but then lost. They said that they believe Donald Trump was more likely to start a war. So a lot of this now, this is, obviously the shine is gone, like I said. Now Trump is doing so much better with these younger voters that are the most anti-intervention. 40 to 49, he's just crushing it. 30 to 49, we have the 30 to 39 crowd, 40 to 49, or the 30 to 49 together. And we like to break them up in as much detail as possible to really see what's going on. But the younger, especially, that's driving his primary lead, especially younger independents and independent or Republican-leaning independents that are young, are even more anti-intervention than the older voters. And that's why for them, when we ask them about all of these different candidates, Trump does so much better with those age groups, because it's just one of several issues where they kind of had the chance to compare and contrast. And they're not totally trustworthy of the Republican Party at large.
Why should they be? Right? Why should they be? Yeah. I mean, the disconnect between the potential Republican voter, particularly the rural voter, and the Republican donor class. I mean, I just don't. It couldn't be farther. It couldn't be. The Karl Rove Club just doesn't even seem to know what to do with these voters. They don't know how to connect with them, relate to them in the least. It's so interesting because I once heard it put that Donald Trump is a third-party candidate who got a major party nomination. Right, he broke through the establishment grip on the party, as it were, because they couldn't hold him hostage with the purse strings. like they hold everybody else hostage with, including Ron DeSantis, right? He's self-financing. So he was able to break through that. So what do you have any sense of what we're going to see on the horizon a little bit in terms of I naively thought we won the civil war, as it were, within the Republican Party in 2016. Obviously, we did not. And we have the polls that show that the vast majority of Republican rank and file believe that the Republican establishment worked together with the Democrats to thwart Trump's 2020 campaign. Are we going to continue to see this the civil war play out in 2024?
Yeah, I do sadly think that that's going to be the case. Republicans still have that, this disconnect you're talking about with donors and the voters. It's there as well with leaders and the voters. It's there with their media surrogates and the voters. They represent 8, 9%, 10%, not even really, but let's call it 8% of the Republican Party. This is very anti-Trump. There are other candidates who garner votes, but for the most part, Steve, 90% of the Republican Party will vote for Donald Trump. That tiny percent has an outsized share of the voice in social media, on Fox News, in the donor class, in the consultant class. So they're going to do their damnedest, their level best to take that 8% and crack it into 12 if Donald Trump is the nominee. So they can say, see, we told you, if they can try to deny him that election. In this last poll we did something I have not seen anybody else do, which is measure this Trump only vote, the Trump or bust vote, we're calling it. And ironically, it dwarfs that little 8%. So I'm looking at who makes up this 8% and who do they appeal to. And the truth is they're older, much older, and they're whiter. So I think they're going to, unless they're completely eviscerated and run out of town, we're going to have to wait. And there's no nice way to say this. Sometimes it sounds callous or it sounds, inhuman, for me to deliver it like this, but I'm a numbers guy and I'm just trying to say it as it is. It probably will not fully end until they're gone. And by gone, I mean they're older and eventually they will be gone. They will leave this earth. And that's it. The younger, more dynamic, less white, more inclusive, that's MAGA. And they are the future, whether those old guys on K Street want to admit it or not. They're not replenishing their ranks.
No, that's for sure.
Yeah.
MAGA's growing, they're shrinking. Yeah, there's no way around it. Gosh, Rich, I could talk to you all day, both in terms of indictments and Randy Rhodes, but alas, you're all over social media. Where's the best place people can access all your work?
Yeah, Locals, you said it before. Locals is the best place. peoplespundit.locals.com. From there, you'll see everything that we're doing. If you don't sign up and become a supporter, sign up and become a member, because at least then you can keep track of what we're doing. We just started streaming to Locals directly now, like we stream to YouTube, which is great, which is People's Pundit on YouTube, People's Pundit on Rumble. But I do tell people sign up, at least become a member on Locals, because one day I could just be vaporized off the face of the YouTube earth. And and one day I'm on YouTube and one day I'm not. And you can't even post on a community page and say, hey guys, look, I'm off for a week. So become a member on Locals. Best place to do it. Plus, you'll get the polling first.
Absolutely. Yes. And be a supporter, gang. Definitely be. I should say that I am a supporter. I'm not just a member. Absolutely. So we've got all the links down below for all of you guys to go and subscribe to Rich's work. I couldn't recommend it more. Again, his local subscription platform is fantastic. I get the emails almost every day. It's wonderful. So make sure you do it. His data and his analysis are absolute gold. So you're going to love it. Rich Baris, man, thank you, dude. Keep jamming. It's awesome. And in more ways than one. Keep going. Let's do it again soon.
Will do, Steve. Thanks for having me on again. All the best.
You bet. God bless.